do record the session. Thank you very much. And I do a little edit and a little output from this. I'm Mart at YourBigPic, founder of the business and creator of Big Picture, the engagement and collaboration tools. We help clients solve what we're calling in our new development for 2022, wicked problems in innovative ways. What do we mean by a wicked problem? A wicked problem is something that cannot be solved in one pocket of the organization or by a single individual. It is generally at the organizational level, and we can't apply what might be called linear thinking to the problem. So it's not something that's straightforward and simple. And we feel these are the more difficult problems that organizations are facing now, and we're going to be showcasing them on our new partner platform in the new year. Hi, June, welcome.
Hi.
Hello. Just getting into my intro. Welcome. We'll flow through and you can join us, and Bryce and Wendy are going to take us through. When I talk about solving wicked problems in innovative ways, we mean that in two levels. One is using a big load of engagement and collaboration to generate outcomes. So we feel that engagement and collaboration is at the center of a lot of these problems, and we're so passionate about that. We created a tool, Big Picture, which we're going to use today in a digital form, but you can see I'm surrounded by it physically in my office. And that's the tool that I created because I got really frustrated that some of the consultancies I was working with 10 or 15 years ago couldn't engage with the wider team as quickly as I think we should. I think it's an untapped resource and potential within an organization. And I think sometimes what happens still to this day is that we, the wider we, what we do is we think we're awfully clever in coming up with strategy and change and finance, but actually ideas and concepts, but actually what we don't do is involve the wider team. And I think we can achieve that if we engage and collaborate with them in the right way. So where we're going with the business on those wicked problems is that we have specialists in the areas of change, strategy and finance, also learning, performance and teamwork. And what we're going to do is showcasing how we can solve those wicked problems with a blend of 2 or 3 of those specialisms, using and activating colleagues at the center. And that's where the business is going. We run these live events to give you a very, very small insight into the way we use the tool. Clearly, we can't cover the whole thing in 45 minutes. So what we do is we give you an insight, and then you're very welcome, if you're watching this recording, and for participants in the room to have then a follow-up conversation. It's like, well, I like that bit. How could you help this client do more of that kind of thing? And it is scripted to a point. We have a session plan today, but what generally happens is as we build up our connections on the Big Picture board, is we'll go with the flow and we'll see where the attention goes with our contributions. If you've got access to the board, then great, move things around. If you haven't, then Bryce, Wendy or I will interpret what you're saying. We will share the board for the majority of the session with our little Zoom pictures alongside. So if you're not in the board or you're watching the recording, you can see what's going on. And Bryce and I have taken a before shot, and when we'll take an after shot. So hopefully we can get lots of input into the board. So I'm going to hand over to, I talked about the different offers. We've got 2 today. We've got Bryce, who is strategy lead, and Wendy, who is learning lead. I'm going to hand over to them to take us through. If I could just have 5 minutes at the end to sweep up, make some connections and some observations. And that's what I'd like to do. So collaborate and interact away. Over to Bryce to take us through, I think, initially.
Right. Greetings, everybody. And I'm glad to have Wendy as partners today, and Martin, as always, in the driving seat. I described him during the week as being in the catbird seat, and I don't think he went and looked it up. But
I hope it's complimentary, Bryce. Well, when it's you in so many ways, and I think you're maybe taking it to the edge. I hope it's complimentary.
Well, it's kind of interesting. It's not rude at any event. So it's nice. And I think everyone on today has been on the board at some point in time. So it's not totally unfamiliar. However, I just want to touch on two things. First of all, we're looking at the SOAR framework, which is strengths, opportunities, aspirations, and results. And today we're just going to focus on strengths and opportunities. One would then perhaps have a later session doing aspirations and results. And the model comes out of appreciative inquiry, which was developed by David Cooperrider at a Canadian university. And appreciative inquiry is perhaps one of the most powerful tools that one can deploy in any space that you want to think about. But for some reason, people still want to do all the negative things that don't really play to people's strengths. And it's maybe part of our makeup. And Bev, who's also one of the partners, made a point earlier in the week in an email to me saying, well, it's, we programmed to solve problems. So we tend to start with problems. We like problems, and we think that that's where we should start. And what happens with the appreciative inquiry process, we basically ask a question like, okay, so things are not great, but something must be working around here. What is it? And how do we get more of it? So even in a bad situation, if at a marital level, if you're in a bad marriage and you're still together, well, something must be working. I'm not quite sure what. You'd have to work it out for yourself. But if you start off with what's working, maybe you can build on it. So this is not marital guidance that I'm giving here, but it's just one way of using the model.
Well,
so
one way to add even more value, Bryce, coming on a live event at Your Big Pick, not only do you pick up learning around a new tactic, you get some advice on domestics as well as.
In any event, Jackie Stavros and Gina Hinrichs basically took the underlying appreciative framework and overlaid it with the SOAR framework. And Jackie and Gina wrote a book about it called SOAR. And Jackie, I'm not sure about Gina, I haven't seen her much in evidence, but Jackie, who I have been in contact with,
Oh, we've lost Bryce mid-floor.
Have we? Okay, am I not?
Yeah, you're back, Bryce. We just lost you.
Okay, well, I'm glad I'm back. So maybe it's a sign I shouldn't talk much longer. But in any event, so Jackie is out there very actively, and it's worthwhile listening to some of her work. She's a very accomplished facilitator. She's on the faculty at the university, and she drives the strategy portfolio there. And she's a very straight shooting lady, and she's a little proprietary about the framework, but then I guess she did invent it. So that's life in a way. But today what we're doing is using the board a bit differently. We're only using the actual light bulb or opportunity symbol. And what we've suggested is that we've got a series of areas that we're going to look for strengths and opportunities. And those areas are in the code at the top right hand of the board. Martin, maybe you can zoom in a little bit on that. And it's basically we're looking at customer, employee, stakeholder, which I've used a K for because I was already using the S somewhere else, marketing, operations, partners, results, and suppliers. And so essentially you can look for a strength or an opportunity in each of those areas. And on the right of the board, I've actually pre-coded a whole lot of opportunity symbols. What I'd like to ask you to do is, if you select one like CO for customer opportunity, or EO for employee opportunity, that you leave the 2-letter code at the beginning and then add your wording for what you've discovered. So for customer strength, you might add that. So you might add CS, customers of long standing, or just of long standing, because you don't have to put custom in because the C stands for custom. So you might just put CS long standing as why you think it's a customer strength. And CO might be CO become our salespeople. So maybe our customers could become our salespeople. So what will happen then is I'm going to go around the board now, and all the generic ones that I've put, which are fairly long-winded ones, I'm going to whack, so that we will be left only with ones that you have coded. And Martin's board's designed so they come up on the right-hand side when you click on the light bulb. and we will then spend some time prioritizing them. Now, obviously, the situation is a bit artificial. In a real life situation, we would all be in the same company and looking for the same strengths and opportunities. So you have to accept that it's a little synthetic. But if you can think of strengths or opportunities that you have experienced and put them in as a descriptor, then I think we could still have a very interesting and useful session. So Martin, that's basically what I wanted to say. I don't know whether Wendy wants to add anything, but I'm going to go around now and whack all the generics.
I'm going to suggest, Bryce, that what Wendy helps us with is, imagine you've described the big picture approach, and then maybe Wendy can just give us maybe a little breakdown for anyone who's thinking, blimey, there's a lot here. Wendy, I don't know whether by example or just by giving us it in a very simple, chunky way whilst Bryce does his housekeeping. Is that fair, Wendy?
It is, but I think Bryce has described it beautifully. So unless anybody's got any questions, does it? I can't see everybody. I've got my, there we go. Does it feel complex to anybody so far?
No, it seems fine so far.
Blimey, it's maybe me, and I designed the big picture, so I'm gonna go. I'm okay with this because I'm gonna imitate and learn from contributions that are made.
All the generics are gone now. I'd just like to just read out one quote in a very nice video, which I did post in the LinkedIn feed. David Cooperrider, who's very mesmerizing in a way, even though he's very quietly spoken, was talking about an interview he had with the late Peter Drucker, who I'm a great admirer of. And next to, at the top of the board on the right, there's a quote that Peter Drucker gave David Cooperrider in their meeting, and that is that the tasks of leadership is to create an alignment of strengths in ways that make a system's weaknesses irrelevant. And I think that's very powerful because I'm a great military enthusiast and in many, many great battles, and Martin doesn't like the military analogies. It's because the person who won basically played to their strengths and deployed them against the other side's weaknesses. So you can look at it at a military level or at a business level.
Nice.
So the board's yours, colleagues, if you want to populate.
And if Sholem and June haven't got access into the board, then if they want to report verbally with any thoughts, then Wendy can maybe interpret and plonk them on. That's a technical term.
Plonk, yeah.
But maybe Raj, you've got access and you did opt in with your I get it statement. So guess where I think we might take our first example from, Raj?
So in terms of where I would start is if we're focusing on a well-established business, the strengths will probably be, for me, will be the relationships they already have with their customers and their suppliers, because they're the champions. Because you've obviously built that relationship over time, and the reason why they're still a customer is due to that relationship. Do you want me to start moving stuff across? Or
no, if you wouldn't mind tagging someone, just putting a brief descriptor in, then they will start to populate on the opportunity ladder, as it were.
Okay, so if I say, so I would say I'll probably put strengths in. I hope I'm putting this right. So you've got marketing sales in a sense that you've had that relationship through marketing sales with it. So the long-standing customer. Did you want me to duplicate this, or?
Well, no. If you can find a related strength, perhaps in addition to the customers being of long-standing. I mean, you could add the word loyal, because sometimes customers may be long-standing but not loyal. They just come to us because they have no other option in life. So they might not be loyal. They could be long-standing but not loyal.
Okay.
So then you would just tag it with CS again, because that is what we're gonna sort of sort on. And then immediately after CS, you would put loyal as another characteristic of a customer.
Okay. Just type this in. Okay, so I've stuck that in as a CS loyal.
No, that's great. So now that will propagate. If you just click on the light bulb in the top right, you will now see that the top one is CO salespeople. And if you come down, you can pick up your CS loyal right at the bottom and start moving it up to the top. So
nice. I like that a lot. So that's the little loop then, Bryce, right? So people are adding and then there's an immediacy to it.
Yeah,
that's right. Yes. So now I've moved CS loyal on my board right to the top. And we would then, as we do it, they will gradually all become not just a 2-digit or 2-character descriptor, but there will be a word after it. So we're saying that a customer strength is that we have loyal customers, and a customer opportunity, which I've got immediately under that on my board, is that they can become our salespeople. They can actually, we can make them our salespeople. And now we've got CS on my board, CS long standing as a third customer strength on the list.
Nice. So this would be a way of, it's almost like a gaming mentality, is it not? To add on, but then prioritize and then continually loop around. This is the technique we're honing in on.
Yes.
Nice. Let's do some more then.
Yeah. So if I were to say, if I drag some of these, so we're saying a loyal.
I've done a KS deep pockets, which means that a stakeholder strength is that our stakeholders have deep pockets. In other words, they can give us lots of money going forward, which we might need.
Nice. I want to get involved now. I've seen this working. This is neat.
Results. Do you want me to?
Yeah, if anybody, I mean, June, Wendy, Sholem, anyone, just pick up one of the 2 digits that haven't. You can make your own, but you can just pick one up and just click on it, and then immediately after the 2-digit code, put in whatever you see as the strength or opportunity, and then the board will populate on the top right under opportunities with what you've just done.
And do you think, Bryce, that's the way of access, the better way of accessing this, which is you could trigger the thinking by picking almost one of the preloaded opportunities with the 2 initials, and like 6 thinking hats maybe, or that technique which we've discussed before, it makes you think from that perspective. So you're limiting, but by doing that, you're being more creative in the way 6 thinking hats work. Is that that's the idea, right?
Yeah, my thinking is that what you would have is, if you had a whole organization together, people in different areas would obviously be looking for the strengths and opportunities in their area. They would tag it, and then it would appear on the right-hand board. And then collaboratively, we then start discussing which ones are the ones that we should be putting the most emphasis on or the most effort behind, because we could build on strengths and we can obviously exploit opportunities. So we might find that in some organizations, their preferred way to go is to build on strengths. Others might prefer to focus on exploring opportunities, and there might be a mix of them. And then we would end up, hopefully, there's another one, a nice PR loyal. In other words, our partners are loyal. That's another basically a strength that we would see. So that should actually, without being rude to the person who did it, it should be PS or PO. So the opportunity would be that the partner was either, the fact that they were loyal would either be a strength or an opportunity. So I think once people got to grips with it, Martin, there would be a whole lot of these flying around the board, which one could prioritize in the discussion or take away from the meeting and then take forward into the next stage where you discussed aspirations and how you would recognize that you had achieved it, the results, in other words. So you would complete the balance of the SOAR framework, perhaps in another session, and maybe even with a different group of people, because sometimes with brainstorming, we do that. We get one group to brainstorm ideas and another group to apply the breaks and
Nice.
work out which.
And I think based on my observation earlier, Bryce, about the imitation, once, because Raj was able and willing, we're looking around the room for someone who's kind of willing to like lead the thinking, and Raj has jumped in. What I feel inclined to do, because I want to get involved, is then I would follow along. So that's a pattern we see in Big Picture all the time. By giving out the availability, the symbols, whether it's physical or digital, people will then play along. And something else I've noticed as well, Bryce, is that it works. The board still works as a gap analysis piece. So I'm looking at customer care and I've taken CS and I've gone, I'll take CS because you've told me customer goes in the customer care. There's nothing in there already. So what I'm wanting to do is to populate that, because that's just my character and personality, that I want to venture and explore into areas that no one else is playing, because there's a chance I might learn something or create a connection with somebody else in the room. That's what I've observed.
Yes. No, I think that's exactly right. You can run with a theme. If someone triggers one of those flashes of genius, then you could run with that theme for a reasonable length of time and extend it and add to it. But we on my board, we've now got CS loyal, customer strength is loyal, that they're loyal, customer opportunities, that they could be our salespeople, customer strength is that they're long-standing, the fact that stakeholders have deep pockets, KS, the fact that employee strengths or that they have direct knowledge of customers' needs. So we're getting a nice blend of possibles that we can start to bounce around and share with each other, and that we could take away on the board and explore further if that's the way we prefer to go from a time point of view.
Nice.
And someone's come up customer strength. The customers are returning, so they come for repeat business. And then another customer strength, someone's identifies ability to upsell to the customers as a customer strength, an area that we could exploit. And that obviously could also be a customer opportunity. So both a strength that we are already able to upsell to them, or perhaps a customer opportunity if we're not yet upselling, but we can.
Yeah, I think
an employee opportunity as well, isn't it?
Yes, of course.
Is it significant, do you think, Bryce, in the way things have turned out, that operations isn't getting as much attention? We seem to have gone around, but not plonked anything in operations. Do you think there's something going on there, or do you think that's just?
Well, it's an interesting one. I mean, Raj, would you see cyber security as an operational issue? So that's my question. And if so, then it could be a strength, or there might be an opportunity to enhance our existing state of play in that cybersecurity space. Where would you see cyber fitting into the organizational framework, Raj, in operations?
So a lot of the work that is delivered in cybersecurity, especially ongoing, is around operations. And that's where you can identify where things are going well and things aren't going well.
Yeah.
And it helps you strengthen that relationship with a supplier. Usually where you have a lot of breakdowns with a relationship, especially when engaging with customers is around the operations. So just say, you say you're going to deliver something, you have a great relationship, you have the knowledge, you sell this to your client, and then now you need to deliver it, which I reckon where operations plays a good part on that relationship part as well. Because if it's not, delivered, or when things start going wrong, it's around that operations.
Yeah, that's great. Now, see, we've now got an operations strength that we've got state-of-the-art kit, which the baddies haven't yet mastered. And we've got an opportunity to automate. And that's what seems to be what everyone's going on about digital transformation at the moment, that in order to stop the big resignation, we need to take away a lot of the grunt work, if that's the appropriate terminology, from the work that people are currently doing. And the way we do that, obviously, is through automation and machine learning and all those other fun things that IT people scare us with.
Nice.
I would sorry, Martin. I would
Yes,
just come back to the information. I mean, we're living in an information age, and I mean, you guys in the EU has got the GDPR. We have what we call POPI. So I think at the end of the day, somewhere on the line, being a big issue, especially if you want to operate in the is how do you protect personal information? I mean, if customers know that their personal information, it goes hand in hand with cybersecurity. If customers know that their personal information is protected and respected and well treated and not sold and all sorts of funny things, they'll come back to you. So I think information. I don't know what you call it.
Security.
Information security is going, especially going forward, is going to become a big issue. Customers will not do business with companies that don't respect and protect their personal information. And we already see it. I mean, just looking at the hacks and all the things happening, I mean, people moving away from customers that are from companies that don't respect their personal information. So I don't know if that makes sense. And I mean, I think it's a huge asset, and it's something you can build on. If you can tell your customer, listen, your information is safe with us.
Yeah. No, I think that's very important, Sheldon, because it seems to me that people are very matter of fact about it. Oh yes, I'm sorry, but your data was all compromised. Oh yes, and your ID numbers out in the public domain where all the people who want to spoof us can spoof us, and oh yeah, oh sorry about that, and your credit card details also are not doing so well. I think there's kind of a rather casual approach to it at the moment. So being more serious would make sense. Incidentally, I've now whacked all the generics. So anything that gets added on from now on, you've got to do a 2-digit code and then give a benefit. Nice. So we now have a short list, as it were, starting. So
what happened there in flight, Bryce, a very big picture facilitation type technique is around housekeeping in flight. Sometimes we struggle to achieve that. But what you've managed to do between yourself and Wendy is, I was watching that happen whilst listening to Sholem. It is possible there. I know it's a demonstration and maybe not industrial strength with 20, 25 people in the room. But what you've managed to do there is do a little bit of cleansing, a bit of weeding and pruning, as I call it, to maybe take us into the next iteration, which might be an ordering. What I often observe at this point is that I use the gaps on the board generally in big picture to draw attention. So for instance, at the bottom there, you've got results and metrics, and that's an RS and an RO. Now, for whatever reason, and this always perks people up in the room because I think they're always surprised, I'm not going to tell them why that's empty. I don't actually know. They all know I don't. So the question in the room would be, why do we think, have we not drawn enough attention to it? Is it because it's hiding at the bottom? Are we afraid of identifying metrics and measures because we might fail? And that's where my thought is that a thought? Is that fair to observe that? Because I'm marrying up your specialist adaptation here for SOAR and big picture with some general big picture facilitation, which I think carries over really nicely. I think I'd want to check in with results and metrics before I went, I think, to the right-hand side. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think that's very interesting, because the question then is, well, if you can't measure it, how do you know it's been done? And so it would raise a real question in an organization that wasn't addressing the question of what the metrics should be to measure whether we are going off in the right direction or not. I once worked with a head of a university, and she was an accountant, and she once had a meeting with a client and said to the client, you know, your figures are 1 year out of date. You're actually bankrupt. And the client said, no, we're definitely not bankrupt. And they said, well, how do you know? Because your figures are a year old. So we do need to know what the metrics are to know whether we're on track or whether we're in trouble.
So this is quite a specific ask. So what I've gone and got is I'm going to get an RS and an RO and rack my brain as to what that might be. And that could create an interesting part of the session, because instead of people picking off the ones that you loaded the board with, they're actually, if you give them access to the left-hand side, which is the spanner drawer, they can go off and actually get it themselves. And I guess we wouldn't want to, whilst we're doing housekeeping and we want it to be tidy, what we wouldn't want to do is prevent or discourage people from going to do that, I think. So that could be a little part of the facilitation plan for them to do that. I think will work really well.
Yeah, no, I think that's
and where
great.
my mind is going, and I guess this would be something that we would do at a further stage, but thinking about the SOAR model and looking at the opportunities that we've got down the right-hand side, there's a lot that mention loyalty. So I'm wondering whether one of the next stages from all of these is that we would come up with perhaps one aspiration that might encompass a few of those opportunities, and that then might drive, well, what's the metric to that? How do we know that we've achieved that?
Yeah,
aspiration.
That would be a good way to go, I think. Yes.
And we wouldn't know that, would we, until we've got into the session and seen you. What you've done there, Wendy, is again a big picture facilitation technique, is going with the flow. Like I said in the intro, it's not all scripted. It's like, isn't that interesting? Let's find out a bit more about that. And in the nicest possible way, you can inquire, I do, as to who placed that on. If there were, obviously sometimes you need to be a little bit careful that if people have bought into it quietly, they might not want to speak in front of the room, but I think there's ways of inquiring to bring that voice forward, which might be a voice who hasn't spoken in that organization before, and that's when the magic really does happen.
Yeah. And kind of going back to what you said earlier, Martin, about you know, your frustration about the linear approach to this. This is the great thing about this, you know, big pick, is that it's not linear, and therefore we're not going to go through a linear process of X, Y, Z. It's all going with the flow and seeing what comes up, and ebbing and flowing, toing and froing, whatever we want to call it. But it's and I guess for some people that might feel a little bit uneasy.
It's certainly
to a very linear process.
It certainly doesn't. It's interesting. I mentioned non-linear in my intro around solving wicked problems in a more, not to be mischievous. We sometimes cannot solve them in a linear fashion. This is more disruptive, certainly less linear, and is intended to break what can be a logjam in the problem solving technique, particularly if it's a strategy change and maybe learning blend. And this is why I'm fascinated by it. I'm keen in the time to finish promptly, Bryce. And I think, is there an ordering that, well, I mean, I've seen an ebb and flow to this, which I see in big picture sessions. I must admit, I was a little bit slow on the uptake today. I don't know if I've not slept enough. You could tell at the beginning, I was like, I'm going with you, Bryce. I can't see how it's going to work. At about 15 minutes in, I totally got it. And I'm like, I'm all over the board now. And I think we see this ebb and flow. It's something I speak with Bev about all the time. We don't mind being uncomfortable at the beginning when people are a bit not so sure. I mean, Raj Great stepped in and is like, I'm going to do it, which is brilliant. We look for that. But it has ebbed and flowed. What I'm keen now is to would we say that's a decent effort at a board? We can always come back to it. What would just wrap us up in how we might end with like a defined action or outcome?
Okay. Yes. Look, I do want to just do a round table in a moment and ask everyone how they feel about it. And I know it was a bit of a kind of a mind shift, perhaps the way I structured the board, and it wasn't designed to be complicated, because I think now that we've all got a sense of what it's designed to do, we could do it very quickly. It's like everything else. Once you've got over the learning curve, you could be bouncing these things out. But I think the next stage would be, whether we do it now or whether one did it at a later stage or in a different forum, is we would now order the opportunities and the strengths on the board on the right-hand side there, and we would have a bit of a discussion about it and say to someone, is there one that you feel is lower down than it should be? Is there one that you feel is being over prioritized? And get people to engage with it and say, at the moment on my one, it shows customer strength is that they're loyal. Someone might say, well, so what does that mean? You know, does it translate into anything? Does it mean we've got all the golden oldies and they're all dying off slowly but surely, and we're going to eventually end up with no customers at all? So we could now bring in the negative brigade if we wanted to, or we could just have a general discussion about which one we'd like to prioritize.
I've got an idea, but I have to stop talking because I get too excited about this. I think Wendy mentioned mine, which is, I'm going to go first, then I'm not going to mention anything else. I just need 3 minutes at the end, sweet. Well, Wendy, I think you mentioned loyalty. Did you? Was it you mentioned the loyalty thing a little bit earlier as a theme? What the point is there's this, I don't think this has been manufactured. There's a customer, supplier, and a partner and loyalty. There's a story and an underlying value to that this is brought out over 3 stakeholder communities. Now, that's interesting that is a strength. It would be a case of acknowledging that and doing something with it as a lever in the strategy space, because it has been derived for good reason. I'll stop there because I'd like it too much and let somebody else knock me off the top. I always talk about a king that needs to be displaced. At the moment, our biggest outcome is we've recognized loyalty as a strength across customer, supplier, and partners. Anybody else got a case to make?
Yeah, can I make an observation?
Yes, please.
And I think this would be, in a real life scenario, worth discussing. In terms of the loyalty, there's a very obvious one missing, and that's employee loyalty.
Oh,
interesting.
And that, I think, would concern me. Now, it could just be that, time, it might have come out, but I think it's an interesting one to ponder on, whether this organization has the same level of employee loyalty as they do customer loyalty.
Yeah, and especially at the time of the Great Resignation, which we have now. I mean, if we don't have employee loyalty, then we really are in the cart, as they say.
Yeah.
Thank
Shalom, Raj, anything you want to add?
Yeah, I was going to say that based on, I've stuck on the loyalty ones. I was the one that's putting that around, and the reason for that is, I guess it's very important to understand where that individual is, as well as I'm on a startup journey. So I don't have employees. So my relationships are with the partners, are with the suppliers. Because if I don't have those relationships, those strong relationships, I can't deliver my piece of work. But if I were to grow and have employees, employee loyalty is very important to me. And those results and metrics as a business owner, and if you have various people wear different hats. So having this board, you have your marketing person, you have your sales person, you have your HR person, you have your PR person, you have your accountant. And I reckon I can see, while talking on this board, you can actually see how they all relate to each other and how it all works. And I think when I started, I'm seeing it from my vision, as well as by having all your others' inputs, you're like, yeah, you're right. And that's the beauty of this board, because you get everyone else's input. Because of where my journey is, I would say I wouldn't be where I am today if I didn't have that loyalty to all those relationships with my partners and my suppliers. And as I grow, I will need that loyalty with my employees, which will then help me achieve my results and my goals, which are underneath, which we'll be able to measure and setting those goals, and what are they. And you need to be able to measure and forecast, as you put over, because you need to know what your revenue is. So for you to be able to grow, because you've got, for you to grow, you need to be able to measure your results in those matrix, and that's really important. So I think every element just draws into, I'm just thinking about how I'm running my business, but it all relates, and it's good to just see, hear everyone else's.
Nice. There was an ES loyalty hidden away. Did someone just add that?
I just added it in. I'm guilty.
I love the fact. I said it wasn't manufactured.
He's loading the board. He's loading the board. That's not allowed.
Raj has got a cottage industry in loyalty symbols. And now, if we were in the room with the physical symbols, it'd be interesting seeing Raj focus on that. Obviously, with Zoom and the digital kit, it's not quite as visible. So that's really interesting. Reading the room point. Surely it's probably good.
Love to go on to add.
Yeah.
I'm just I mean, to me, a lot of these things are actually, because I'm not dealing with it on a daily basis, or I mean, it's new, but definitely employee loyalty, not loyalty. I don't want to use the word loyal. It's actually commitment. It's hand in hand with employee engagement, experience. I mean, obviously, yeah. So I think it's very important, which actually then also link, and I think someone mentioned it. There's a direct link between your employee experience and your customer experience. If you have engaged and committed employees, obviously they will make sure that the customers are also, and that's very important. If you look at your top one there, is customer loyalty is one of your strengths. So that goes hand in hand for me. Very important.
Nice. Yeah, that's beautiful. Thanks.
Could I just have a quick run around, Martin, before I give it back to you?
Yeah, sure. Go for it.
How does each person feel? Would this be a useful process to use, do you think, in an organization that you were trying to help move forward? Once people had got the actual, the concept right, do you think it would be a useful tool to use?
Yes, because I personally think you get everyone to, you can't read people's minds, right? And this board actually gets their thought process and what they think, what the, like example, customer loyalty. Why I will go back and change that to commitment as well on what was said, because those things are like, yeah, that is true. It's law, it's commitment. And then you need and I think it just builds it all together. Yeah, you're right. Your employees, you want them committed, you want them loyal, because they're speaking to your customers, and that has a knock-on factor with your business. Because if your employees love what they're doing, your customer's going to see that as well. And I wouldn't have thought of that if we didn't get, even though to people like, oh, that's common sense, but we wouldn't have got that out in the board of a conversation if we didn't, talk about it and put it out there. So it's not in my head anymore. It's actually out on this board.
Thanks, Raj. Other thoughts? Other people feeling about the usefulness?
Can I just add another thing, Rosa? Maybe I may be off the point completely, and I think then Martin should actually shoot me. Is that customer education? I think also very important this day and age is you need to educate your customer about your product. I mean, your employees obviously need to know, especially the salespeople need to know what they sell, otherwise they can't sell. But on the other hand, also you need to actually, and I think that is a huge opportunity that business people actually look past, is educating the customers of, on a lot of things. Your products and product usages and all sorts of things. And that is also an opportunity that I think, especially we all fish in the same pond, and there's a lot of fishes, and there's only so many fish, so you'll have to do something different. And what is going to be this factor that's going to be different, make you different from the other people, from the other supplier next to you? So you need to think outside the box. And maybe I'm, just because of my legal training, is I'm a linear thinker. So what I would actually suggest as a thing is that I mean, I can see the big picture is very nice, and I mean, you see everything. But I think in the end of the day is to maybe, I mean, take it not, you know, I know about the disruptive and disruptive approach and everything, but to give, I mean, you guys are now know what's going on, but I mean, for me, like coming in new, there must be, and once again, I'm talking about a golden thread. There must be some sort of a structure to the whole thing. You can't be there all over the place. I mean, it doesn't make, to me, my brain is, I'm sitting here like, you know, so it's a maybe just as a thing, as set out the process in the beginning and say, okay, listen, we're going to look at opportunities, we're going to look at strengths, and we're going to take it by department or, you know, group departments together or whatever, just as an example. But this makes sense. This is actually quite nice. Really.
I didn't shoot. I didn't make any shots, Sholly. So that was wonderful.
Wendy,
Thanks,
any thoughts, your thoughts on how effective it could be, or how usable it might be?
It's definitely usable, and I think what I like about it is that it opens up conversation. And as Raj said, you end up kind of thinking about and going places where you wouldn't necessarily go because it's opened up a conversation amongst the whole group. And listening to what Sholem said earlier about loyalty, it's really making me think about whether or not we can actually expect customer loyalty. And from an employee perspective, I much prefer that word commitment. I think that makes much more sense. But yeah, in the world that we're in at the moment, can we legitimately expect customer loyalty? And therefore, what does it look like in the new world? But in terms of you know, the product, it absolutely is usable, because it opens up that conversation for everybody to input into.
Just to add on to what Wendy's saying is, remember one thing, like the product is one issue, but people buy from people. So employees, to me, is going to, and I mean, look what's happening in America with the big resignation or whatever was happening. Employees will become the center and the focus point. Because, I mean, you can have the best equipment, you can have the latest equipment, you can have the latest kits, state-of-the-art kit. If you don't have people that know what to do with the kit and speak to the needs of the customer, you can forget about it. It's going to be, you're going to fight a losing battle. So there's a couple of focus points, and obviously, and once you have that magic formula, I think that's what you're looking at, and that's what's going to distinguish your business from your next door business.
Well, Martin, I'm kicking the ball back into your court now.
Yeah, brilliant, Bryce. Absolutely love that. It's got me, like, my brain's just flipping around. I absolutely love it. I've written 4 things down just to leave us with what I call thunks, things that make you stop and think. They've not got an easy answer. So think about that experience. I touched on it with Raj. So I've got my physical things around me. I've got the poker chip. I've got the road sign size symbol. Clearly, post-COVID and on Zoom, we're much more comfortable. Unfortunately, we've got a digital kit which we've used today. Imagine how that experience might be different if I'd given Raj or Sholly 3 of these symbols, and like you were either sat in your seat or you got up and you approached the board. And it's that experience in the room that's where this comes alive. I think it comes alive in digital, but actually physical, you'll get a whole different layer, another dimension to it. The second theme that came out around being comfortable with discomfort, the ebbs and flows, the fact that you front load that discomfort, because at the end, I don't know if you noticed it, like 20 minutes, half an hour ago, we were all more comfortable with sharing, because I think the penny was dropping at collectively different times. And I think that's natural in a group. And that's why we have to be okay at the beginning, imparting the knowledge and the environment and the resources for people to interact in their own way. And I think that's where a lot of approaches miss a trick, because we get scared of that and we put up a PowerPoint and we tell people, and then we're surprised there's a lack of engagement in engagement surveys. It's like, put the stuff in the front, like Bryce has put so much thought an effort into this facilitation technique that at the end it starts to flow. And I would say if we had a group of 25 people, that would be multiplied up. We would see even greater diversity, even greater, maybe less ebbing, but certainly more flowing, which is where you can use different walls, different breakout rooms physically, and then bring it back to a nice clean board. I love the housekeeping bit halfway through as well. The third thing I've got here is the versatility of big picture board with another tried and tested method, in this case SOAR. We're doing some work in the change theatre with ADCAR as a change method. There are these methods out there that all are accelerated by a lot of engagement and collaboration. So if there are other combinations that you think about, we'll hand those off to the specialist partner to kind of explore and develop, and we may even feature them in one of these exploratory live events. Really interesting to take a tried and tested and combine it. It's like a combo with big picture. Really excited about that, and that allows us to develop our session plans and our value with your help. And the last one is the sharing useful truths. I think it's been touched upon a number of times. When we do this and we impart that ability for people to interact, they will share useful truths. And it was the example of the loyal versus commitment, contribution or commitment. It's that language that maybe Wendy and Raj were in an organization and they've not had a chance to talk, or it's been very transactional. Yet that language, by just getting that right and sharing that language, that means back in the business, in the workplace, that rapport, that empathy, and that working together is going to be increased, because I call it windowsill facilitation. Bryce and I are sat on the windowsill watching this play out in the room, where those colleague to colleague interactions all start playing out. And that's all I mentioned. I think I love the prep that goes into this, Bryce, the thought. And I think I said to you this morning in LinkedIn, whatever happens today, we should continue this as a theme and something we develop, because I think the combo, our hunch was that the combo is really strong. And I think this is an engaging facilitation technique for SOAR that other people would be interested in, and we should be ready to stand up and tell that story through the platform. So I think that's exactly what we should do. Unless anyone thinks that's the worst idea ever, if you're watching the recording and think we've totally missed the point, then do let us know. The feeling in the room that there's something there that of value to go through with. And I think I'm done on that. I can't think of anything else. Anything else from anybody?
Well, thanks, Martin. I think that's a nice recap on things. And I really do think it's a natural partnership. And at the moment, the Shalom made the point about employees, and so is everybody else. We are losing employees because we are being transactional in their use. We're not recognizing the issues in their lives. And this great resignation is not going to stop anytime soon. And unless we can get everyone in the same room to talk about it, we're going to end up with top management coming up with, well, we'll pay them more. And if they go, well, it's, good riddance to bad rubbish. And we'll go and buy some more people that are better and brighter and more bushy-tailed. There's likely to be a rather cynical approach to it. But the bottom line is, if you don't make your people front and center at the moment, and I think Shalom emphasized that, you really are going to take a hiding in this new post-COVID world.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Bryce.
Raj, I know you're going to attend, I don't think it's happened yet. Are you at a SOAR conference or event? So we're really interested in your feedback.
Yeah.
How you find that, and what as another reference point. We're running these every 2 weeks regularly. Thanks for coming in. For those who signed up and are watching this, please join the next one. And to everybody in the room, most importantly, Shali, Raj, Wendy, and most importantly, Bryce, who prepped this. And I think he's prepped it. He's got me, my energy level has just gone way through the roof. This has got me thinking really hard about this being a really good technique and a really good story to tell. So hopefully, if the outcome is you can say, I attended this session, it's a treatment facilitative approach to SOAR, then we've achieved one objective, which is we've all learned something together. And I've really enjoyed the interaction and the fact we could all have a voice in the room. Very big picture like. Have a lovely day. Watch out for the outputs next week. I'll do a bit of an edit somehow, and I'll share that with you. And we'll put up a blog just so you've got something to refer to and to acknowledge your attendance and contribution. Thanks so much. Have a lovely weekend and take care. I'll speak to you later.
Have a poetic time.
Bye-bye.